Hello, and welcome to Stones of Creation with Patty Lancaster. I'm going to discuss the various things that we are discussing. In our previous thing, we went over the Nalk and the Com and the different races, and so we will continue with the races in this one. Specifically, we're going to tackle whatever this thing was is still something interesting. But in fact, we're going to tackle another plant critter that wasn't previously added because I didn't think of a way to do it. But the more immobile plant creature I do have a solution for. And it might be this creature. This creature might actually be part of that. So now, let us discuss the first, let me turn off the whole section. The first of the races of Nalk, the Hyken. The Hyken are plant-like things, minds, massive and nigh eternal, a giant growth that in their youth can be moved around in large clay pots, but eventually take root, growing massive, each one a tribe among itself. They are mostly nomadic, interacting with each other little, small groups, 2 or 3 of the Hydrin. Through their limbs they operate. Small bulbs that act separately, but with the same mind as the Hydrin. The limbs are the powerhouse of the Hydrin, the main body, the operation. The Hydrin cannot move, and while the limbs are limited around in an area around them, it allows them to tend to crops, to grow. Several cities of other races will have a couple Hydrins inside them. And they will operate as caretakers, living nigh eternally compared to all the other races. The Hydrin take little interest in many of the magics, though they will interact with spirits when necessary. They don't see the need to put their great intellect to work to learn the ways of the flow, and so there's few mages of their kind. And so you're left with a small nomadic people that vanish when they die. Though for the cultures that build around a Hydrin, their main body serves as a great repository of knowledge. In an age where tomes are not known, where the best knowledge is stored on a tablet, you have this massive thing, an elder creature that can live for aeons. They can store more knowledge than 100 clay cylinders inscribed deeply with your records. Though they may not be quite as accurate as such cylinders, they'll last longer and be more readily available. Through any of their many limbs they can speak, though their true enormity compared to the lesser races is shown clearly when speaking to the Node. It is to be noted, though, that the Hydrakins do let this go to their head. They're individualistic to a degree, not completely without working for others, but they see others as a means to an end in almost every case. They see the other races as simply an operation, an independent limb they can't control like normal. Just something that they have to operate more difficultly to control. Recording their records, it's an interesting pastime for them. They don't deal with magics because why? They are already the greatest thing. Spirits are just small things that exist beyond their realm that they cannot control. And if they cannot control them, then it's not important. They cannot control the mountains or the waterfalls, and so the waterfalls and mountains are not important. And so it can be said that the spirits are not important because they cannot control those either. They can control small areas of earth with their limbs, moving it, tilling it, tending it, but they cannot control the spirits. And so they don't need to bow their own whim to the spirits, do complicated rituals to appease them. Rather, they simply are. They ignore magic not because magic is impossible for them to do, but because their pride doesn't let them do the submission necessary for magic to be completed. Other races are not quite as prideful. Now, of course, it should be noted that not all hydrins are that prideful, though with the sheer smallness of their number compared to other races, this is not quite an overgeneralization as it would be to say anything about the other races. They're not actually set up yet, so I can't say too much about what their traits would be. But so the word of the Hydrin is pride. I have 6 races. I might give each one of them a sin. And so the sin of the Hydrins are pride. They are operating at such a level that nothing else can compete. What is a single individual compared to the hundreds of limbs a Hydrin can operate? They are the size of a small town just by themselves. Even young Hydrin, still in their pot, migrating from their homelands, they're free to operate. They can grow, they can develop, they are completely independent. Once their parents have created their pot, they only rely on their own limbs to move it. And any race they work with is just a benefit to them. Something they've operated to gain control of new external limbs beyond their normal capacity. And so Hydrins can be found running cities, but they are the most draconic of cities. They are well-ordered machines where the Hydrin will not tolerate too much change. Everything must work as they deem it so. As they watch out from above the city in their great ziggurats, massive tombed inside, watching, growing, large, fat, limbs, watching the city to the point where they have so many non-limb thralls that their limbs can only operate as overseers rather than independent laborers as they once did. And it should be noted that the largest cities will always have a Hydrin or 2 in charge. Though, this gives us the idea, the only thing a Hydrin is not greater than its own kin. But this is a delicate balance. The Hydrin will not submit to each other, and so there is a delicate balance whenever 2 Hydrin work in the same area. Usually they're mate bonded, and so they have submitted somewhat to each other. but in such a way that they are not submitting fully, in a way that they can submit but maintain their pride, complicated self-justifications, but something that they need to be able to allow themselves to mate and breed. And occasionally you'll see them with their child still around, though often the child gets out, unwilling to submit to the parents, and so as soon as possible leaving them. And this is the life of a hydrin. To be born, vying with one's parents for power and control, until eventually they discover that they cannot defeat their parents on the home turf. They take their limbs and they move themselves far away, and they set up their own domain, where they will take as many creatures as will follow them, or just their own limbs and take the land. The main source of permanent settlements in the world of Nalk the Hydrin. The greatest of races. And this has been the Hydrin and the Stones of Creation with Patty Lang Esther.